What happens when Hollywood's toughest action hero loses his cool on live television? In just 48 seconds, a friendly conversation turned into one of the most shocking blow-ups in talk show history. And you won't believe what set him off. Before we get into this insane drama, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now. We bring you daily videos exposing Hollywood's darkest scandals, the confrontations they don't want you to see, and the moments that prove these celebrities are nothing like what you think. Hit that subscribe button because you're not going to want to miss what we uncover next. Last night on The Late Show, what should have been a celebration turned into an absolute disaster. Sylvester Stallone, the legendary Rocky Balboa himself, walked onto that stage with a smile, waving to the crowd, looking every bit the Hollywood icon we all know. The audience was on their feet, cheering, excited to hear about his latest projects and maybe some stories from the good old days. Stephen Colbert welcomed him with open arms, shaking his hand, making jokes, getting the crowd hyped up. Everything seemed normal. Everything seemed fine. They sat down, and Colbert started off light. He asked Stallone about his workout routine, joked about how the guy is in his 70s and still looks like he could take down an army. Stallone laughed, flexing his arm playfully for the camera. The crowd went wild. He told this hilarious story about how his dog keeps stealing his dumbbells and hiding them around the house, how he found one in the garden last week covered in dirt. Everyone was cracking up. Colbert was eating it up too, asking follow-up questions, keeping the energy high. They talked about Stallone's daughters, how proud he is of them, how they keep him young. They talked about his wife and how she deals with having an action hero around the house. Stallone joked that she's tougher than any villain he's ever faced on screen, and the audience loved that. They went through some Rocky memories, some behind-the-scenes stories from the old days that had people laughing and clapping. For about 10 minutes, it was everything a talk show appearance should be. Fun, entertaining, feel-good television. Colbert was in his element, cracking jokes, doing his impressions. Stallone was relaxed, smiling, engaging with the crowd. If the show had ended right there, everyone would have gone home happy. Everyone would have talked about what a great guest Stallone was, how funny he was, how good he looked for his age. But then Colbert shifted gears, and you could see it coming. You could see him building up to something. He did this thing where he got a little more serious, leaned back in his chair, and said, "Okay, Sly, before you go, I gotta ask you about something that's been making headlines." He brought up Stallone's recent comments at a political event, where the actor had praised certain politicians and made some controversial statements about the direction of the country. The audience got quiet real fast. You could feel the temperature in that studio change, like someone had opened a freezer door. Colbert leaned forward in his chair, that smile still on his face but his eyes getting serious. He said, "So Sly, I gotta ask you about something. You were at that rally a few weeks ago, and you said some pretty strong things about leadership in America. You called certain politicians heroes. You praised policies that a lot of people find really concerning. A lot of people were surprised by what you said. Do you stand by those comments?" The energy shifted immediately. You could feel it. Stallone's whole body language changed right there. His jaw tightened up. His shoulders got stiff. He looked at Colbert for a long moment before responding. Then he nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, I stand by what I said. Every word. I believe in speaking my mind, Stephen. I always have. That's who I am." The audience was quiet now, waiting to see where this would go. Colbert pressed forward, saying, "I respect that you speak your mind. I really do. But some of the things you said, they upset a lot of your fans. People who grew up watching Rocky, who saw you as this symbol of fighting for the underdog, fighting for what's right. They felt betrayed. They felt like you were supporting people who are doing the opposite of what Rocky stood for. Don't you think you owe them an explanation?" And that's when you could see Stallone starting to get heated. His face started getting red. He shifted in his seat, leaning forward. He pointed a finger at Colbert and said, "I don't owe anybody an explanation for my personal beliefs. I'm an American citizen. I have the right to support whoever I want to support, to believe whatever I want to believe. Just because I played a character in a movie 40 years ago doesn't mean I have to think a certain way in real life. Rocky is not real. I am." The audience was dead silent now. Some people were shifting in their seats, uncomfortable with where this was going. A few people in the back were already pulling out their phones. Colbert tried to keep his composure, but you could tell he was getting fired up too. His voice got a little sharper. He shot back. Nobody's saying you can't have your beliefs, Sly. Nobody's saying you can't support whoever you want. But when you use your platform, your massive influence, your status as a beloved icon to promote ideas that a lot of people find dangerous or divisive, you have to expect some pushback. You have to expect people to question it. That's how democracy works. Stallone laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. It was bitter, angry, sarcastic. He said, "Dangerous? You think my opinions are dangerous? That's rich coming from someone who sits here every single night telling millions of people what to think, who to vote for, what's right, and what's wrong. You act like you're this voice of reason, this moral compass, but you're doing the exact same thing you're accusing me of, Stephen. You're using your platform to push your beliefs. The only difference is, you think your beliefs are the right ones." Colbert's face went from friendly to stone cold in a second. His smile disappeared completely. He sat up straighter in his chair and said, "I'm a comedian and a political commentator. That's literally my job. That's what people tune in for. They know what they're getting when they watch this show. You're an actor, Sly. You make movies. You entertain people. But when you step into the political arena and start championing policies that hurt people, that divide this country even more than it already is, that go against everything your most famous character stood for, yeah, I'm going to call that out. Yeah, I'm going to ask you to explain yourself." The tension in that room was unbelievable. You could cut it with a knife. Stallone sat back in his chair, crossing his arms defensively, staring Colbert down like they were about to throw punches. His voice got louder. He said, "You don't know what the hell you're talking about. You sit in your ivory tower, in your nice studio, making your jokes, thinking you're better than everyone else. You have no idea what real Americans are going through. None. You don't know what it's like to struggle, to work your way up from nothing, to fight for everything you have." Colbert wasn't having it. His voice got louder too. He leaned forward, pointing back at Stallone, and said, "Real Americans? Are you serious right now? Don't lecture me about real Americans, Sly. Real Americans are the people who are struggling because of the very politicians you're defending. Real Americans are watching their rights get stripped away, watching their health care disappear, watching their communities get torn apart. And you're up on stage at rallies cheering it on. That's what people are upset about. That's why they feel betrayed by you." Stallone's face was bright red now. His hands were gripping the armrests of his chair so hard his knuckles were white. You could see a vein popping out on his forehead. He was trying to control himself, but he was losing that battle fast. He said through gritted teeth, "You think you can lecture me about what's good for America? You think you know better than me? I've lived this country. I've worked my ass off to get where I am. I've bled for my career. I've inspired millions of people around the world to never give up, to keep fighting, to believe in themselves. And you sit here, in your comfortable little late-night slot, acting like you're some kind of moral authority. It's complete bullshit, Stephen." The crowd gasped when he dropped that curse word. You could hear it ripple through the audience. Some people started murmuring to each other. Others were fully recording now, phones up in the air. This was going completely off the rails, and everyone could feel it. Colbert's producers were probably freaking out in the control room. This was live television. This was happening in real time, and there was no way to stop it. Colbert tried to dial it back just a little, but he was angry now too. His face was flushed. He said, "Sly, I'm not trying to attack you personally. I'm really not. I'm trying to understand how someone who built their entire career on playing heroes, on representing the little guy, the underdog, the person who stands up against corrupt systems, can turn around and support the very people who represent everything Rocky fought against. It doesn't make sense to people. Can you at least understand why it doesn't make sense?" But Stallone was done listening. His patience had run out. He stood up suddenly, violently, his chair rolling backward from the force. He reached down and ripped off his microphone, yanking the wire so hard it popped off his belt clip, and threw it onto the chair. The sound of it hitting the leather echoed through the entire studio. The audience gasped again, louder this time. This wasn't acting. This wasn't part of the show. This was real anger exploding in real time. He pointed at Colbert with a shaking hand and said loudly, his voice carrying to every corner of that studio, "You know what? I came here tonight thinking we could have a real conversation, man to man, human to human. But you just want to ambush me. You just want to make me look bad in front of your audience, score some cheap political points, get some viral moment to boost your ratings. I don't need this crap. I don't need to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly made up his mind about me before I even walked through that door." Colbert stood up too now, moving around his desk. His voice was rising to match Stallone's volume. He said, "Nobody ambushed you. Nobody set a trap. You said what you said publicly, in front of cameras, in front of thousands of people. I asked you about it. I gave you a chance to explain yourself, to help people understand where you're coming from. That's what happens when you put yourself out there, Sly. You don't get to hide from it. You don't get to act like a victim when people ask you to defend your positions." Stallone took a few steps toward the exit, then turned back, pointing at Colbert one more time. His voice was trembling with emotion now, a mix of rage and hurt. He said, "Defend my positions? To who? To you? Why do I owe you anything? You sit up here on your high horse every night, mocking people, tearing them down, acting superior. And when someone pushes back, when someone doesn't bow down to your opinion, you act like they're the problem. Well, I'm not bowing down. I'm not apologizing for who I am or what I believe, and I'm damn sure not staying here to be treated like this." Stallone shook his head, his face twisted in frustration and anger. He backed away from the desk, his hands gesturing wildly now. He said, "Defend my positions? To you? Why should I have to defend anything to you? You're not judge and jury, Stephen. You're not God. You're just another talking head with an opinion. And your opinion doesn't matter more than mine, just because you have a TV show and an audience that claps when you tell them to." That hit Colbert hard. You could see it on his face. His expression changed from angry to hurt, then back to angry again. He said, his voice getting sharper and more cutting, "My opinion matters because I'm trying to stand up for people who don't have a voice. People who are being hurt by the policies and politicians you're promoting. I'm not going to apologize for calling out hypocrisy when I see it. I'm not going to stay silent when someone I respected, someone I grew up watching, someone who played a character that meant something to millions of people, turns around and spits in the face of everything that character represented." Stallone's eyes went wide. He took a step toward Colbert, and for a second, it looked like things might get physical. Security guards near the stage tensed up, ready to move in if needed. Stallone's voice was shaking with rage now. He said, "I didn't spit in the face of anything. Rocky was a character, a fictional character. He doesn't exist. What he believed, what he fought for, that was a script. That was words on a page that someone else wrote. I brought him to life, sure, but that doesn't mean I have to be him. That doesn't mean I have to think like him or act like him or believe what he believed. I'm my own person, and if you can't separate the actor from the role, that's your problem, not mine." The audience was completely stunned into silence. Some people had their hands over their mouths. Others were looking at each other in disbelief. This had gone way past uncomfortable. This was a full-scale meltdown happening right in front of them. Colbert wasn't backing down, though. If anything, he was doubling down. He said, "Fine. Separate the actor from the role. I get that. But you still have a responsibility, Sly. Whether you like it or not, you're a public figure. You're someone people look up to. And when you use that status to promote harmful ideas, you're doing damage. Real damage to real people. And yeah, I'm going to call that out. That's my job." Stallone threw his hands up in the air, his voice reaching a near shout. He said, "Your job? Your job is to lecture people? Your job is to tell everyone else how to think and what to believe? That's not comedy, Stephen. That's not entertainment. That's propaganda wrapped up in jokes. That's you using your platform to push an agenda, and then having the audacity, the nerve, to criticize me for doing the same damn thing. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. It's actually incredible to watch." The word propaganda hung in the air like a bomb. The audience reacted with shocked sounds, some gasps, some murmurs, some people shaking their heads. Colbert's face went red. His whole demeanor changed. He moved closer to Stallone, and you could see his hands clenching into fists at his sides. He said, his voice sharp and cutting, "Propaganda? Are you kidding me right now? Are you seriously calling what I do propaganda? I satirize politicians. I make fun of people in power. I question authority. I hold the powerful accountable. That's the opposite of propaganda, Sly. That's journalism. That's comedy. But you, standing on a stage praising authoritarians, praising people who want to tear down democratic institutions, praising leaders who attack the free press and try to silence dissent, that's a hell of a lot closer to propaganda than anything I've ever done on this show." Stallone's jaw was clenched so tight you could see the muscles working in his face. He said, low and dangerous, "You don't know what you're talking about. You don't know the first thing about my beliefs, about why I support who I support, about what I've seen and experienced that led me to my conclusions. All you know is what fits your narrative, what makes me the bad guy in your little story. Well, guess what? I'm not hiding from anything. I'm not ashamed of anything. But I'm not going to sit here and be disrespected, insulted, and attacked by someone who doesn't understand the first thing about what I believe or why I believe it. You want to paint me as some villain, as some traitor to the working class because I don't agree with your politics? Fine, do it. But I'm not playing your game anymore." But Stallone was already walking toward the exit. He turned back one last time and said, "Adults? You wouldn't know how to have an adult conversation if it hit you in the face. Enjoy your show, Stephen. I'm done here." And with that, he stormed off the stage. The side door slammed behind him so hard, it made everyone in the studio jump. The camera stayed on Colbert, who was standing there speechless, his mouth hanging open, not knowing what to say. The audience was buzzing, people talking over each other, some cheering, some booing, complete chaos. Colbert finally found his voice and said weakly, "Well, we're going to take a quick break." But you could see on his face he was rattled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Nobody expected Sylvester Stallone, the Italian stallion, one of the biggest names in Hollywood history, to completely lose it and walk out on live television. The producers were scrambling backstage. You could see crew members on the sides of the stage talking into their headsets, trying to figure out what to do next. The band awkwardly started playing music to fill the dead air. Some audience members were still recording on their phones, capturing every moment of the aftermath. Others were just sitting there in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. This wasn't some scripted bit. This wasn't a publicity stunt. This was a real, genuine meltdown between two strong personalities who clearly had very different views on some serious topics. And it all happened in less than a minute of actual confrontation. From the moment Colbert asked that first political question to the moment Stallone walked off that stage, it was like watching a bomb explode in slow motion. What made it even crazier was how fast it escalated. One minute they were laughing about workout routines and old movie stories, and the next minute they were at each other's throats, throwing accusations back and forth like they were in a boxing ring instead of a talk show set. Neither one was willing to back down. Neither one was willing to admit they might have crossed a line. It was pure ego, pure emotion, and pure drama. The thing is, both of them made some valid points in their own ways. Stallone wasn't wrong that celebrities get criticized for expressing political opinions, and that sometimes it feels like a double standard. Colbert wasn't wrong that when you have a massive platform and you use it to promote certain ideas, people are going to react, especially if those ideas clash with the values you seem to represent for decades. But instead of having a productive conversation about it, instead of trying to understand each other's perspectives, they just went straight to attack mode, and the audience was caught in the middle of it all. You had people in that studio who loved Stallone and agreed with his politics, and you had people who loved Colbert and agreed with his politics, and suddenly they were forced to watch their heroes tear each other apart right in front of them. It was uncomfortable. It was messy. It was everything a live television broadcast is not supposed to be. The worst part was how personal it got. Colbert bringing up Stallone's fans feeling betrayed. That was a direct shot at the actor's legacy. Stallone firing back about Colbert sitting in his ivory tower that was questioning the host's credibility and authenticity. These weren't just political disagreements anymore. These were character attacks. These were two men who clearly had built up some resentment toward each other, or at least toward what the other represented. And it all came pouring out in the worst possible way. When Stallone ripped that microphone off and threw it down, that was the point of no return. That was him saying, "I'm done playing nice. I'm done pretending this is okay. I'm done being here." And when he pointed at Colbert with that look of pure frustration and anger on his face, you could feel the decades of Hollywood experience, the decades of being in the spotlight, the decades of dealing with criticism and judgment, all boiling over at once. Colbert, to his credit, tried to keep it together. He tried to de-escalate near the end, asking Stallone to sit back down, to talk it out. But by that point, the damage was done. The words had been said. The line had been crossed. There was no walking it back, no smoothing it over with a joke or a handshake. This was a real rupture, and everyone watching knew it. The cameras captured Stallone's face as he delivered that final blow, telling Colbert he wouldn't know an adult conversation if it hit him in the face. That was brutal. That was designed to hurt, designed to leave a mark, designed to get the last word before storming out. And it worked. You could see Colbert's expression change, see him realize that this wasn't just a heated exchange. This was a full-blown disaster that was going to be replayed and analyzed and talked about for weeks, maybe months. As Stallone disappeared through that side door, the sound of it slamming echoed through the studio like a gunshot. It was the exclamation point on one of the most explosive moments in late-night television history. The audience didn't know whether to clap, boo, laugh, or cry. They just sat there, frozen, watching Colbert try to compose himself and figure out how to move forward with the rest of his show. The whole thing lasted less than a minute from start to finish, but it felt like an eternity. It felt like watching a slow-motion car crash where you can see what's about to happen but you're powerless to stop it. Both men said things they probably shouldn't have said. Both men let their emotions get the better of them. And both men walked away from that encounter looking worse than when they started. This is the kind of moment that reminds everyone that these celebrities, these icons we put on pedestals, they're still human. They still have feelings that get hurt. They still have beliefs they're passionate about. They still have limits to their patience and their willingness to be challenged. And when those limits get pushed too far, when the pressure gets too intense, they can snap just like anyone else. Stallone storming off that stage wasn't just about politics. It wasn't just about one question or one comment. It was about respect, about feeling heard, about feeling like his perspective mattered even if people disagreed with it. And for Colbert, pushing those questions wasn't just about scoring points or creating drama. It was about accountability, about challenging someone to defend their positions, about not letting celebrity status shield people from legitimate criticism. But in the end, neither one of them got what they wanted. Instead of a meaningful dialogue, they got a shouting match. Instead of understanding, they got animosity. Instead of resolution, they got a walkout that will be replayed and memed and dissected until everyone is sick of seeing it. That's the price of letting emotions take over. That's what happens when pride and passion collide on live television with millions watching. The moment that door slammed behind Sylvester Stallone, everything changed. The show couldn't continue like normal. The vibe was shattered. The trust between host and guest was destroyed. And everyone in that studio, from the crew to the audience to Stephen Colbert himself, had to sit with the reality that they had just witnessed something they would never forget. Something real, something raw, something that revealed more about both men than any scripted interview ever could.